We had some really great people doing the voices in the show, and many of them carried on to the movie. You know, start with Frank Welker playing Megatron.
Nobody summons Megatron.
You know, I love the characters that Frank Welker portrayed, you know, all of his crazy, zany characters. I loved his Megatron.
More than you imagine, Optimus Prime.
But then he would create these other characters that were just zany and wonderful, and they were vocally so much fun.
Really safe, I'm friends today.
Hey, nobody calls Soundwave uncharismatic. Yeah, let's kick tailgate.
I like those characters too.
Nobody really gets to see unless you're in the recording studios. He was a guy with just a unique gift.
This was almost too easy, Starscream.
Our character sides were things like, okay, we've got Blendo, and he's a blender that transforms into a plane. So we're going to want a sound effects, a little bit plane engine, and a little bit blender, and let's put some bubbles in there, like there's some water in the blender, and Frank Welker would come up and
Yeah, destroy Unicron. Eliminate even the toughest brains.
and then you had as Peter Cullen played Optimus Prime.
One shall stand, one shall fall.
I mean, that voice just defined that character.
Megatron must be stopped, no matter the cost.
We always thought of Optimus Prime as kind of a John Wayne kind of a character.
I thought you were made of sterner stuff.
He was just your solid, sturdy guy, and you couldn't imagine that character without that voice.
Now, all we need is a little energon and a lot of luck.
And you had, on the other end of the spectrum, you had guys like Chris Latta, who was Starscream, who was a stand-up comedian. He wasn't a guy who, his whole career hadn't been coming in doing voices for cartoons. He was somebody, I think, somebody spotted in New York doing stand-up and said, this guy'd be great for our shows. And he brought a whole edge to the party.
Do I hear a second on that?
A psychotic street edge to the performance that added something to it. Somehow that stuff and sort of everybody reacting to this, this edgy energy in the room shows up on the screen.
You're an idiot, Starscream.
But for the movie itself, they wanted a certain amount of marquee value, so you had people who were not regular characters in the movie. You had, Judd Nelson, who was very hot at the time.
If you're gonna ride, Dano, ride in style.
Yeah, I remember when Judd Nelson came in, he was playing Hot Rod, Rodimus Prime. That was kind of fun because he was, huge. He was kind of a Brat Pack guy, and he was like this hot actor. He was sort of the hottest current actor that we had at the time.
Ba weep grana, weep ninny bong.
I did get to work with Judd Nelson. I did a scene with Judd.
I was afraid you'd be trapped outside the city.
Hey, I wasn't worried for a microsecond.
Acting is all about responding to what the other person is saying.
Then you probably didn't understand the situation.
That's when it's great, when you have somebody to play with.
And then there were guys like who were big stars who, I didn't really know who they were at the time. There was Lionel Stander, and then now you see the movies, and you go, wow, he played Cup. It was like years later I actually saw one of these movies. I said, oh, now I totally get that casting, and he did a great job as Cup.
Finish him off, Prime! Do it now!
Cup's this guy always referencing, everything reminds him of something that happened a long time ago.
This reminds me of the battle on Alpha 9. The Petra Rabbits with Grimlock, get your noodle out of my face!
Until you finally get to the scene where you realize he's never seen anything like this before, which is kind of a great moment in the movie.
Doesn't this remind you of anything, Cup?
Nope. Never seen anything like this before.
One of the most interesting people we recorded was Robert Stack, who did the voice of Ultra Magnus.
I got to work with Robert on some other projects throughout the years, and we used to talk about this movie, and he so enjoyed doing that role.
Prime, you said the Matrix would light our darkest hour.
So like the real Robert Stack was coming in to do a character, and that was kind of huge.
And Robert Stack, he's a remembered icon. He's a legend.
Now there was a guy who was a huge figure from my childhood because he was in a show called The Untouchables, and Robert Stack was Elliot Ness.
I loved the character in the movie, and I loved that Optimus Prime was able to pass the Matrix on to Ultra Magnus. I think that was my favorite scene in the whole movie. It was really touching, and a lot of the acting came out.
I'm just a soldier. I'm not worthy.
I didn't want to act like, some dweeby fan and all that, but we were sitting down talking to him. He was saying, I've never really done any of this voiceover stuff. And he was really kind of nervous about it. And I'm sitting there, I'm talking to Elliot Ness, and he's kind of nervous about this.
I can't deal with that now.
And we were just saying, just do it. I mean, you got a great voice, and you're going to be doing it. You're going to be playing Ultra Magnus. And we told him who Ultra Magnus was, and he does a great job. That's one of my favorite voices in the whole show.
Autobots, prepare to board the shuttles. This new menace is more dangerous than all the Decepticons put together. Somehow we must destroy it.
The irony of the whole thing is he became the host of a show called Unsolved Mysteries. And if you listen to the voiceover he did in that show, it's some of the creepiest voiceover I've ever heard. It was, he could take, a rather mundane murder case and turn it into, a search for the Loch Ness Monster. And it was great. So hopefully we did something to help him on his voiceover career.
Come on, showtime's over. We've got work to do.
Leonard Nimoy was wonderful too. He's Mr. Spock on Star Trek. We all know that. So the thing is, though, he came in and he said, "Do you have a bathroom?" And we said, "Yes, it's right over there." And he went in and he did vocal scales for 20 minutes. And then just really getting his voice ready. And then he came out and he said, "Now I'm ready."
I will rip open Ultra Magnus and every other Autobot until the Matrix has been destroyed.
I remember the day Orson Welles came in.
I am Unicron.
We decide, Unicron, we use Orson Welles.
There was this famous audio tape of Orson Welles just reaming some sound engineer, and this was this fear object for every voice recording producer and animator. So, and this guy Orson Welles just ripped this guy up one side and down the other, and you think, oh man, I'm going to be in that room with that guy.
And I asked him, I said, "Well, tell me, Orson, how do you feel about the fact that this tape has gone around the industry?" He said, "I rather like it. It intimidates people before I arrive."
Excellent.
So Orson Welles comes in.
He was a little bit late,
I mean, he was a huge guy. I mean, he was, I'm 6'5", and he was probably about the same height as I was, but he weighed like 450 pounds by the time we got him.
You exaggerate.
He came in and he said, "I understand I'm playing a whole planet."
Then it pleases me to be the first.
But he was great. The whole thing that was interesting is we had the time where all the techs were doing the mics and all that. I remember we were talking about the Mercury Theater, and we were talking about his character, and he thought it was, I think, kind of fascinating that I'm playing a giant planet.
Perhaps I misjudged you.
Then when he read his line, oh no! Right away I don't think I can use that.
You are a fool.
Obviously, he's just not in really great health. He was in a wheelchair when he came in, but he could sort of walk over to the recording thing.
His voice is like, almost like, how are we going to use, his voice?
And you sort of hear him wheezing a little bit.
Then we put synthesizer, make his voices make gigantic and strong.
This is my command. You are to destroy the Autobot matrix of leadership. It is the one thing, the only thing that can stand in my way.
It's not that we're 100% his voice, but we pretty much made his voice good,
Proceed on your way to oblivion.
Then really sorry, this is after 2-3 months, he passed away. This is the last, this is the last of his voice on Transformers.
Destiny. You cannot destroy my destiny.